vision.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Ilana Freeland, the author of the book out there, Chemtrails, HAARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance.
Hey.
Thank you. I'm thrilled that I'm very impressed that Portlandians come when it's so nice out, and that you're here to learn about this technology, because it is a technology. I today will not have to go through all the elementary parts about the chemtrails. I'm very appreciative of the people who've spoken today, so that I can move on to yet another aspect of the technology, a very important aspect that my next book, which will not be out till January, is going into, and that is, the title is Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. So today, that's what I'm going to spend time on, is just to give you an idea of what this technology that we are now experiencing, some of the grander scale agendas that this will serve. And again, I will concentrate on the military, as long as you understand it's the military-industrial intelligence complex. And that this is, I don't have any solutions at this point. I think for me, my main commitment is to educating the public about what is really going on. And recently, when David Keith, et cetera, came out and began to normalize the geoengineering piece that we've now been under for 2 decades, since Clifford Carnicom first started doing collections in northern New Mexico in the late 90s, we see now that this is not going to go away. Some may have hoped that when President Trump entered office, that perhaps he would do something about this terrible technology. The truth is that this technology is entirely too valuable to other agendas. There is no way that it will be stopped, no matter what administration is in the White House. So the way I look at it is this. We have our health to protect. We are facing an opponent who has all the guns and money and all the lies, all the media at their disposal. And our job is to awaken, which is a very real fear of global elites, that the masses will awaken. It has always plagued them and made them think very hard and heavy about how to exploit the masses and keep them asleep at the same time. This is our job. As I said, and someone reminded me of today, I was on an interview from Caravan to Midnight, and I said that, you know, this is my watch. And that is the deepest thing I can say, is why do I fight so hard if I don't believe that we can stop this easily? It is because this is happening on my watch. And I will not leave the earth with my death without having done everything I can on my watch.
Yeah.
And for people who, I mean, we in the chemtrails movement, I know, Patrick, we know this, we have our upsets. We have our arguments. We don't all agree on the delivery system that is going on in the skies and in the GMOs and the vaccinations. We argue. Some people name call. Some people make assumptions without much substantiating the assumptions. It's very hard to conduct a movement on the internet. The internet is the sole way in this giant country from sea to shining sea that we communicate. It's understandable. We hardly ever meet. We don't have summits where just the leaders show up and discuss all the things and work out their arguments and their disagreements. We don't have any of that. We lack the resources to do that. And it's as though the movement is, yeah, full of chiefs and no Indians, and, you know, to be a racist comment. But it is very much about how we're all feeling our way. We're the blind men feeling our way around the elephant in the living room. And some people understand the tail, and some people understand the trunk. And we have to constantly remind ourselves that this is how it is. And my piece is simply the military piece, is the way I look at it. I'm primarily concentrating on that because I have noticed at every climate change conference, every climate change article, the military is never mentioned. And it's unbelievable to me because the military is a primary piece. It has been able to weaponize the skies and ionize them. In other words, turn them into battery, turn the sky into a battery, turn the sky into a condenser, turn the sky into an antenna, so that then they can have all of their wireless operations 24/7, always. And that's why it will not go away. So let's be clear on that. Before I go to the space fence, we've got to understand that the piece of the sky that is being ionized is essential to the space operations that are already in place, all right? And that's what this next book is about. It's explaining how the ground level implements, such as the cell towers, the Gwen towers, the NEXRADs, the radar installations, all of these things are part and parcel of a huge space operation because we entered a space age very silently, very quietly, very national security. And we are in it. But we will be the last to be told that. That's how it's working. So today, it's going to be sort of like bells and whistles. I just want you to get a picture, use your imagination, of how this is playing in. So let me say there are three major components of this. Now that I finished this chemtrails book, because that was a book about, okay, what do we know in 2014? That's what it did. It goes all the way from the chemtrails and the difference between a chemtrail and a comtrail to Chapter 8, where I go deeply into Clifford Carnicom's work on Morgellons. Okay, so that's done. Now I have learned, and this is very much a learning exercise, that there are three major components to this military operation. One is what's flying in the skies and being laid to ionize and keep everything ionized, and to piggyback various things like microprocessors, sensors, biologicals on the nanotechnology that is being dumped with this delivery. The second one is space, near-Earth orbit. I'm not talking about Mars right now or Saturn, but space as a near-Earth orbit being absolutely controlled. Okay, that's the second one. Third one is the human being and transhumanism and the future that we're being herded toward. They all fit together. They're not separate. And that's going to be my challenge. It's in the Space Fence book, I pretty much build a total picture of how it works, as if the Earth and near-Earth orbit were a machine, being built into a machine. And the third part is our genetics of the transhumanist future. And now the 5G will be coming out, and the 5G is millimeters, the tiniest, tiniest, tiniest waves. And this will shatter DNA. So these three parts are all connected. And today I'm going to spend time on the space fence, and I will be starting a book on synthetic biology very shortly. And that'll be hopefully the last book I write. I won't know anymore after that. So here I just reminding people who are familiar with my work, these are the 7 agendas: military in nature, military industrial intelligence complex in nature. And Clifford Kardicom is the one who first thought these up. I've changed them a little bit because I've developed my ideas a little further. So we all know about the weather and the weather engineering that is going on. Then there's planetary geophysical operations, where various parts of the Earth, you're going to see them change. It's not just a matter of the salt domes down in Louisiana collapsing and huge holes opening up in highways. There are going to be various things changed with weather engineering, and that's happening in New Zealand right now, in my opinion. Then electromagnetic operations, they've discovered plasma. They've discovered how to make plasma. In this electromagnetic sky we have now, they can produce plasma entities. You'll hear about plasma orbs. You'll hear about various weird things happening, clouds that look like stones bouncing on the Earth. Plasma is the name of the game now, to discover how to use plasma, how to create it, and probably how to sell it, yes. So directed energy warfare, producing droughts in order to get nations to obey, in order to get nations to buy cloud seeding and ionizing cloud seeding. It's a moneymaker, and it's a way to threaten and muscle nations into a certain behavior. Biological transhumanism, I mentioned that. This all goes all the way from Morgellons to genetic modification. Surveillance and neural operations. This is mind control, to be very brief. This is completely mind control and easy to do. And finally, the last one, which is the most far out, I suppose, the detection and obscuration of exotic propulsion systems. And when I say that, we could include UFOs, we could include plasma orbs, but we could also include the discovery, which is quite, for at least 50 years, of anti-gravity propulsion and other propulsions. So these are what are on my mind when I think about this issue and write. Now there is a new agency in town, a 6-gun shooter agency, that I think is probably more important than the NSA in this context. And that is the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the NGA. They are in charge of the what's called the intelligence grid, the Geospatial Intelligence Grid, GIG. It's called GIG. That's what I know it as. And they're to be watched. Here is kind of what they look at when they're working with the weather, or a little movie short. And this is Lockheed Martin, you know, one of my favorite military contractors.
There are millions of objects in space. Every time there's a launch to space or a collision in space, there's going to be extra objects up there. The primary purpose of the Space Fence system is to detect, track, and catalog these objects. Space debris can include non-operational satellites, as well as anything that was used to get the satellite up there. And then if you think about events from earlier 2009, with the collision of the Iridium and the Cosmos satellite, that added a bunch of space debris to the environment too. The first step of navigating through the space debris involves knowing which objects are of size that could actually harm your system. Debris can be traveling at speeds of upwards of 15,000 miles per hour. So one of the strengths of Space Fence lies in its computing capability. For example, of a satellite breakup, sensors may pick up parts of this, but with the Space Fence system online, as these objects cross, it'll be able to detect and track hundreds of these objects simultaneously, helping for faster reconstruction of what just occurred. The importance of the program really comes to increasing space situational awareness. One way to measure this is through the size of our resident space object catalog. The current catalog consists of upwards of 15 to 20,000 objects. The point of Space Fence would be to increase this 15 to 20,000 tenfold, so now you're looking at a few 100,000 objects in this catalog. The power of this information really comes from turning it into actionable pieces of information. What this means is when you're planning a launch for a new satellite or the shuttle, you can navigate through the space debris.
Okay, so what he's concentrating on is debris, and it is one of the functions of the Space Fence apparatus to count the debris in space. We now have CubeSats. Cube satellites, maybe about this big, about 12 inches square cube, that are up there, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. They're being sold to private corporations. And yes, there's a lot of space debris. What he's not saying is that the Space Fence apparatus will also be able to count what's on the Earth and surveil to a degree beyond belief on the Earth. Forget the postage stamp. Go smaller. So this is what is also being cataloged. So wherever he mentions space situational awareness, remember that includes us, because situational awareness is a term you will find often in anything having to do with life on Earth. We are now the studied species in preparation for the transhumanist future. This is just a picture here of some of the predictive programming we're undergoing in Battleship 2012. You see the roundness, you can see the straight spike up. Okay, so energy, that would be a bit of plasma energy going straight up, not a laser. Laser would look different. And then the roundness. And then here we had a TV show called Under the Dome. I don't have a TV, so I missed it. But you see the dome there, and that is part of the plasma Tesla dome that Tesla talked about and is now here. The plasma dome can be created over small areas such as HAARP in Gakona, Alaska. My friend Billy Hayes, the HAARP man, was flown up there in a C-130 to view it as it was being made, and then to view it as it was taken down. looks like a video game. One could only hope that it would be, but this is technology. Notice that it all took place in our atmosphere. This was not in near Earth orbit. This was here. And all of this is a capability we have now. This is not about 25 years in the future. This is about now. And yet, what does it depend on? It depends on this ionized atmosphere. It's got to stay ionized. None of this will work on a large scale without an ionized atmosphere. So this is why the chemtrails flying is important. Now, I'm just going to show a little bit of this. It may sound way off base, but we are, of course, media junkies. And you will have noticed these news shows that have this same orbital shape as a graphic design. And this is this fellow's take on it for mind control programming and pre-programming us to be used to this form.
It's the biggest, most expensive, most audacious scientific experiment in history.
Love that Star Wars.
Physicists believe it will answer the most fundamental questions about the universe. The LHC is so big it straddles the Franco-Swiss border at Ern near Geneva. It's essentially a circular tunnel, 17 miles long and 300 feet underground. The really clever stuff is inside. In this tube, subatomic particles, called protons, speed around the circuit. Powerful supermagnets pull them round faster and faster, 11,000 laps a second. Two beams traveling in opposite directions are steered into a collision that has happened since the beginning of the universe, in the first billionth of a second of the Big Bang.
So here you see, he's taking it, it means CERN, which has been circular, will not be circular much longer. But it is definitely the space station that is being graphically implanted in it.
Forget all this stuff. I just want to enjoy the steak.
CBS 4, your new home for the CBS network.
The
to pull people to a certain angle or another angle. Okay, it's going to be financial collapse
or whatever.
It'll be the
let the killer bees or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, etc.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this New Year's Day, Thursday, January 1st, 2015.
And right now, we're going to turn things over to Lindsay Riley.
Clouds, the sun, the poles.
All right. Good morning to you all at home, and Happy New Year.
The human species.
Okay, that's enough. Gives you an idea that this space fence, which eventually will have the same metals that are being dropped on us, the nanometals that are so highly conductive for electromagnetic operations, the ones we're breathing in on a nano scale that are in our system now, the same thing will be done with in space in the near-Earth orbit. The same metals.
They're on the same network?
And that's part of
How do you get my signal?
creating it as a ring around the planet that eventually circumferences the equator. Okay? So we will look like Saturn from space when this ring is done. And if you think about the ring of Saturn, of course there are rings, you have to wonder if there was a civilization there, And if these rings were possibly used for communication on planet and off
Oh, I'm
planet.
so glad it's like, oh, it was the Jews or something.
At least it wasn't like, yeah, it was all good stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see, I don't even, okay, I know exactly that part of that is true.
Oh, it's Patrick. He's out there with his mic on.
And it's irrelevant.
I was like, wow, Patrick, where are you? That's so funny.
Let it happen.
Okay, so now let's go on to the next one, which is
Blame me and you if we were to rob
yet another shield of sorts, and again made of
turned it off.
plasma.
I turned it off. It's off. It's powered off. No, it's off. It's off. No, I just unplugged it. It was powered. I powered it off.
So while this is playing, the LDAL is like a Tesla plasma lens or shield or dome. Atmospheric lens means not in deep space, but in our atmosphere. As Christopher Fontenot, a scientist friend, says, the electrostatic dipole force emitted by lasers can induce electrical potential in objects at a distance, thereby causing that object to repel itself from similar polarized objects such as Earth, or attract oppositely polarized objects. So basically what that means is that's how this works, but it won't work unless you have an ionized atmosphere primed and ready to do this. Now here, Jim Lee, whom some of you know from climateviewer.org, talks about, I'll just use a bit of what he says, about how the LDAL that I just showed you and talked about is actually HAARP technology rebranded.
Welcome, Climate Viewers. My name is Jim Lee from Climate Viewer News. It is January 16th, 2017, and I have an explosive story for you today. The future of spying. Earth's atmosphere can be turned into a massive surveillance system using lasers, scientists discover. Now, they're talking about an atmospheric lens, using lasers to create an atmospheric lens to spy on people. And this system is called the Laser Developed Atmospheric Lens. Where have I heard this before? It sounds a lot like HAARP. But let's get into that technology real quick. Atmospheric thermal lensing and laser resonators. Anybody knows anything about me knows my middle name is Resonated. And that this technology was published back in 1995 here. And there's a paywall here, so I went and found a PDF for you. Links will be in the details. So atmospheric thermal lensing and laser resonators, right there, you can read all about it, but it's generally the same idea as what we've seen with HAARP. So what are we talking about? We're talking about geophysical warfare. Others are engaging in even an eco-type of terrorism whereby they can alter the climate, set off earthquakes, volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. And that was Secretary of Defense William Cohen speaking at the Terrorism, Weapons of Mass Destruction and U.S. Strategy, Sam Nunn Policy Forum in 1997. Nothing to shake a stick at there. And what are we talking about? This artificial ionospheric mirror. We are over here on climateviewer.com/HAARP. And you scroll right down here to why heat the ionosphere. It says create an artificial ionospheric mirror. And I have that for you over here on my script. And you can come look at it. It's straight from the military. This is Arco Technologies and the military going physics studies and artificial ionospheric mirror related,
etc. Okay, so again, we have what I call a dual use. It's not just me that calls it that. The military also calls dual use technology, means can have civilian uses such as for weather looking at space weather, measuring space weather, all sorts of things. But the real use is military. This is from Jim Lee's site, and it's an interactive map showing all the ionospheric heaters in the United States only. He does the whole world. It has also radar installations. It has LRAD. It has NexRads, etc. He's got everything up there. The guy is absolutely amazing in his graphic capability on the net. So please do check that out. Now we are looking again. We looked at a radar unit. We've looked at a weapon system. Now here is the iScat 3D. This one is the iScat, which is in Norway and Tromsø. And apparently they have rebuilt now the 5th generation of HARP, which is far superior to HARP. It's from, kind of. Dutch Sense is showing you what iScat 3D put up as their cool stuff. Notice how big it is. This overall array is much larger than the IRI antenna instrument at HARP in Gakona, Alaska. And it works on FM frequency bands. In fact, it sounds like Northern Europe is about to ban all their FM radio stations for the plebeians like us, and they're taking over the band's frequency to be used for iScat installations. So if you got excited when HARP was shut down, sorry about that. HARP's up and running again too, anyway. Okay, so now some quiet, calm, nice water. Oh, such a nice weapon.
We are living in the neighborhood of a star sun. And sun is not a light bulb. Sun is a hydrogen bomb.
Well, of course, everything we do on the Earth and as a human society is affected by our interaction with the sun. The sun supplies not just our heat and light.
The sun is affecting our environment in so many ways. We have started to understand the multitude of processes, how our vulnerable planet is affected.
Continuously stream.
I'm just showing those scientists to just make you again wonder, how in the world can they work on these things and not realize what they're doing? I have to assume that. I have to assume they don't know. Okay, next I'm just going to whip through these. More radar installations. I've showed this before. This is the SBX. They're all mobile now, and they're even smaller than this and more powerful than this. This is from, I don't think there's anywhere I could go in the country to study this at all. So this is up to us on our watch. This is just a quick, that's jet traffic. Jet traffic, you can't see it, but it's just filled with yellow lines of jets flying. That's how much jet traffic we have. That's what's coming in the JP-8 fuel, alone. And then we have, of course, the wonderful holography. Very easy to do in an ionized atmosphere. Just whip up a few clouds. Plasma clouds. This machine is on a plane. But without the plasma in the atmosphere, you can't do this. And they make it look like it's so vague. They can make that. That's the horse. Okay, drones. Yeah, lucky world. We're going to spread drones. We're going to spread internet and Facebook everywhere in the world. Isn't that wonderful?
Censorship for everyone.
Yay, control over everyone's brain. Yay. Okay. Now we go a little further out into space. I want to talk about Saturn because, as I told you, these metals that are being sent up behind sounding rockets at Vandenberg and Wallops and up up by what's the name of that one? Up by HAARP. These are all leaving trails of these nanoparticulates that are highly conductive: aluminum, lithium, titanium, barium, and what's happening is we're forming a ring. This of course is what they want, is they want to be able to communicate with other planets. Yes, we are there. Maybe. I'll show you something in a little bit, and we'll ask that question again. So this is taken by the Cassini probe over the North Pole of Saturn. And here you actually see plasma. Plasma is the fourth state of matter. It can be a gas. It can be fire. It has various phases in between. So a hexagon. Yeah. The hexagon is very important in the geometric nature, even of the atom bomb, or the hydrogen bomb, or any plutonium bomb. Any type of nuclear device is geometric and usually hexagonal. Very important. Okay, so that. And now I just wanted to mention the Van Allen belts problem. You must know that we supposedly went to the moon in 1969. I want to speak for these conspiracy tinfoil hat people that it is very possible we didn't, because the Van Allen belts are tremendous radiation, and they would have had to wear lead suits and had lead lining the rockets, and there's no way you could get those rockets up carrying that kind of weight. So the Van Allen belts problem, this guy says, they might be able to solve it, and he's talking right now. He's not talking in 1969. You probably saw this on the...
...is about the Orion test flight, liftoff to splashdown, and they basically talk about, what needs to be done in order for this project to take place. And so NASA engineer Kelly Smith is on there, he's explaining stuff, but he says something really interesting. So let's check this out.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
What? We must solve this problem before we can expect to send people through these regions of... What? Okay, so the possibility, however, to be absolutely honest and do what is due is there is another possibility that, oops, wait, I don't want that. Okay, we'll stop there. I'm going to read you something from Dutch Sins, who talked about I remember it, in February 1996. There were these things called high-volt tethers that were put on the STS-75 space shuttle and were loosed up in space, And they whipped around, and NASA had footage of it, and wow, it was pretty dramatic. And what did the high volts do? And they were voltage. They had high voltage, is why they're called high volt. They drained, that's the NASA word, the Van Allen belts of radiation. Dutch Science claims that they had built a new Van Allen belt. They have built a new Van Allen belt further out. And he wonders what this maneuver of these tethers are still up there, whipping around, I guess, like a lightning rod, and what this has done to our weather system. And I think it's a good question. It's up there. Nobody's made any effort to bring it back, grab it, anything. No, it's serving some sort of purpose, and it's possible that it has succeeded in ameliorating the radiation of the Van Allen belts. It's possible. So it's something to consider in all this and going to space thing. Now, besides the anti-gravity propulsion craft that Nick Cook, aviation reporter and editor of the famous defense trade journal Jane's Defense Weekly, discussed in his excellent 2003 book, The Hunt for Zero Point, Inside the Classified World of Anti-Gravity Technologies, other thrusters for vectored craft are being explored. And here's one. This microwave thruster is completely electric. And it looks to me like they're still looking for as wide a variety, because I really feel, and so does Nick Cook, who, again, works for Jane's Defense Weekly and didn't lose his job when he wrote that book, that we have anti-gravity craft. I don't know if it's the XB-47 or if it's or is it 37? Or the Aurora, but we have it. But they're looking for more, and this is one of them. How's my time doing, guys?
It's 6:32, if that helps.
Okay, I think it's time for me. So this is the present cover of Under an Ionized Sky. As I said, it'll be out in January. I really recommend that if you want, what is the purpose of having a whole picture if it makes you feel bad? I mean, really. Shouldn't you just turn on the telly and kick back and watch something you know is a fantasy? Well, maybe it's a fantasy. You really don't know who's writing the scripts. I know who's writing the scripts for most of the movies, but you don't know about TV. Well, I kind of feel it's the same people. All of it is a psyop. Remember, you are the subject of a psyop. You don't need to be Martin Luther King to deserve to be a psyop of the American military intelligence. No, you don't need to be important, as they say. We are fodder. We are grist for the mill of learning more and more about planet Earth and weaponizing as much as possible. This is how the military mind in the higher echelons works. So why is it important? Because you are a conscious being, that's why. Your birthright, whatever regime you live under, we could have been living in the 1400s under the Catholic Church too, and it wouldn't have been all fun and games. We could be living in some feudal lord's empire where he likes cutting throats and raping small children. We have been under elite domination, we born in the lower classes, for many, many centuries. So it's not new. But what is new is the level of consciousness that we are bringing to the task of deciphering how we shall maximize our lives under the yoke of occult, diabolical, elite power. This is new. And I maintain, I am not targeted at this point. I have been targeted 3 times. I definitely got the message. And they all ended. So I felt it was sort of a pulling my chain. And I adjusted myself at that time, and now I'm continuing on. So you can have a personal life that is as meaningful as in any other time, but you may have to make some changes. We can't be the indulgent Americans anymore and survive and thrive. I assure you of that. Everyone in here and everyone I know, I don't have your blood type, I don't have your blood on a slide, but I would say that we all have breathed in the biological known as Morgellons, and it thrives on the iron in our blood, and it's just another one of the parasites living in us. The only difference is it's programmed, and it's remotely connected to the laptop boys. So this is something we need to now take into account. We're living in a more sophisticated era than the 1400s. And we, meanwhile, turn off the telly and start thinking for ourselves, or continue thinking for ourselves if you are one of the minority of people that understands how this works. Going into alpha wave in front of the TV because you've had a hard day's work and you deserve it is nonsense. You deserve much better than that. And it can even be just staring off into space. Or it can be having a meaningful conversation with someone by telephone or other ways. I mean, examine your lifestyle. What serves your watch? The watch you were born to keep. And so we educate ourselves, we learn how this technology works. You don't have to be Ilana Freeland to do this. Yes, I am working all the time on this. I have to admit, I'm a slave to this. But you too can learn enough that you can pass on to your children and your grandchildren tremendous survival skills which have to do with your consciousness, not just enough food on the table. And I do believe, I can't prove it yet, but I do believe that consciousness is a huge thwarting device if you have enough of it. Consciousness preceded matter. There's no question. So if consciousness preceded matter, that means that it has the generative power to move in matter and change it, okay? All right, thank you.